Welcome to Communication Strategies. What we're about to embark upon is an intense journey through the organizational and personal communication challenges faced by many managers, yes, you, in today's digital age. Now, what you have to remember is that in order to address current and future issues, we need to acknowledge the past and build upon the infrastructure created by those who came before us. Are you up for it, my friends? Great, let's roll. Think about the way you communicate during the course of any given day. More and more traditional channels have been replaced by digital ones. Whoever thought that the last thing anyone would ever use a telephone for would be to make a telephone call? Handwritten letters put in an envelope with an actual postage stamp? As popular today as the VHS tape, the supersized menu at McDonald's, and most government officials. But keeping politics out of it, let's explore what other transitions await you as a newly minted or fully prepared communications manager. Now, Hank here has been able to boil down the entire management function to three interpersonal clusters. Naturally, interpersonal roles involve exchanges with personnel from different levels within the organization. Informational roles involve the receiving, interpreting, and passing along of relevant information among and between the different levels on the workplace food chain. And finally, decisional roles are the bailiwick of the effective manager, synthesizing information, generating options, and carrying through to the most logical conclusion. However, let's dig deeper. Here are 5 distinct managerial roles occupied by individuals in any number of organizations these days. Is it possible to be a combination of any or all of these designations? Naturally, but the next slide adds even 5 more. So before moving ahead, consider the difference between a manager and a leader. What is leadership anyway? Does a figurehead have any real power? What about a liaison? Are all monitors to be trusted? What does the disseminator need to do in order to establish trust among the various audiences he or she interacts with? As previously mentioned, here are 5 more typical roles served by many managers here in North America. Adding to the 5 previous ones, you can see where as a manager, you might be called upon at any point in your career to serve any number of these functions. So, my friend, would you be ready? Do you know what each of these titles really means or the skill set that it entails? Well, hopefully by the end of the course, you will. We may have to do a little negotiating, so you can cross that one off your list already. So what separates the best managers from all the others? An innate ability to allocate enough time to each issue that comes at them, generally in wave after wave during a typical day. Senior managers, colleagues, and employees all vie for time. Managers need to change roles frequently, sometimes during the same meeting, creating soul-crushing tension. Those managers that can most effectively keep any number of balls in the air and not only know which skills to use and when are generally those that find themselves on the fast track. So it varies. Well, the emphasis. But hang on. The most interesting 2 words on this slide are local and vision. This calls for a narrowing of the managerial focus so that he or she is able to consistently recognize the situation, break it out into its component parts, and then address each of these parts effectively and efficiently. Entrepreneurs tend to take on leadership roles because they are risk takers and they are able to demonstrate to their employees the value of thinking outside the box, but never to the point of jeopardizing the organization's goals. So far, so good? All right, I realize we're going a little quickly, but that really is what a good manager can do. Follow along. Okay, we've been through the roles and some of the realities of today's managerial position. And now here are some top-line skills that you're going to need. And as this is a communication strategy course, don't worry. We'll get those skills soon. Why do you think that relating skills can be equated with type O negative blood? Well, first you need to know what type O negative blood is. That's because interpersonal communications remains the one constant through every level of any organization, and the most effective managers are able to move fluidly among and between levels and wear whatever hat the situation might demand. Aha! Finally, something we can all hopefully relate to. If you think about it, unless you're living on a desert island, communication, be it face-to-face or virtual, cannot be helped on a daily basis. In fact, in addition to food and shelter and perhaps the odd bit of clothing, it should rank up right up there as a constant in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now don't worry if you're not familiar with that terminology. By the end of the course, you will know exactly what it means. And today, technology makes it even easier to communicate with a wildly diverse number of audiences across the globe. Does anyone's head hurt yet like mine does? Because this is a general overview chapter, we're going to top line it for you for now, but just remember that every time you interact with another human being, there needs to be give and take. In fact, the communication process centers around your ability to translate meaning from any communications exchange, whether you are the speaker or the receiver. And just like most things in life, the communications process involves a number of steps, each of which must be completed before you can successfully extract the meaning from any message. Just look at the different number of situations in which communication takes place. And this is just a brief introduction. One thing students need to understand is that in today's workplace, the ability to effectively speak and write well can generally set individuals apart and makes them the best managerial candidates. The fact that you're taking this course at this point in your scholastic career testifies to the fact that you understand the value of effective communication skills and have decided to do something about it. Now just remember that you write far differently than you speak, and in this course our mantra will be less is more. It will all be in how you formulate the less that will determine your success or failure. Yes, you may gasp now. As a manager, you'll be expected to carry your own bucket. That is, you're going to be expected to synthesize incredibly Byzantine instructions from upper management and distill them into language that employees on the front line can understand. You'll also be expected to know where and how to get data in all shapes of this mishmash, and then shape this mishmash into a coherent communications piece that not only reaches the intended audience but does so effectively and generates the expected response. Now, we're not going to sugarcoat it. At some point during the course of your manager career, your job will depend on your ability to do just that. The words you use and the way you use them will give shape to your ideas and get them across among and between the varying levels within the organization. Now, there's no shame in not understanding something. There is shame, however, in not taking the time to find out why you do not understand it. As a manager, that is the expectation, and one which you must fulfill in order to survive. You see how all this is starting to come into focus? Information is everywhere these days. In fact, you now have access to more information than at any point in the history of the world. Now, how does that make you feel? But as a manager, you not only need to know where to get it, but how to get it, how to interpret it, and how to reinterpret it for others. That is what we mean by context. Can you put it in the proper context for your audience to understand? As the messenger, many times you may be erroneously wounded. Now, notice we didn't say killed, by not fully understanding something before you turn around and try and pass it along. Hopefully, it will only be a flesh wound. At least we hope we're great at this. The biggest mistake many managers make is to assume that their writing is everything that they think that it needs to be, and they never get a second opinion. In fact, getting a second set of eyes, preferably belonging to an individual who either is or could potentially be part of that audience, is always the best way to get an accurate read on whether the meaning is being conveyed. In this case, hubris can be much more than a sin of pride. It can potentially be one of stupidity if you follow. Of course, they're not going to admit that they're poor communicators. You're talking to communications professionals, so what would you say? The point here is not to question the results. The point here is to question the context in which the question is asked. People generally answer the way they think you want them to answer instead of the way that they should answer. Ask yourself the question and write down an honest response to it, and you will then have a measuring stick for which to use for the rest of the course. Now that you have your measuring stick, let's look at some of the responsibilities you will have as a manager. Know what you're good at, but more importantly, what you need to work on. Never think of your existing skills that they're going to stay as sharp as you think they are, and always look to add new weapons to your communication arsenal. None of us are ever old enough to learn new tricks, but every one of us should share what we already know, those so-called old tricks, to see if they're still relevant. Who would have thought that staying current was important as a manager? As far as developing confidence, always strive to be assertive and not aggressive. Assertive managers are those who are considered by others, who consider others' opinions and ideas. On the other hand, aggressive managers always try to steamroll others with their ideas and demands, and as we all know, that can have a devastating effect on workplace morale. As a communicator, you want to be the type of manager who employees want to interact with, who come to for advice, and who seem managers to be designated as the go-to person. Something critical nature to be disseminated. And that, dear reader, is the essence of what you're about to embark upon. So let's roll right now into how to develop an effective communication strategy.